how not to lose yourself in our overwhelming and confusing digital age. If you do feel overwhelmed and confused, this one is for you. I'm going to read to you a statement that perfectly describes the modern human condition, or the default situation of the modern human being living in this digital age. And then I'm going to analyze and break apart piece by piece this statement to provide a roadmap for you to not lose yourself, to maybe find yourself or protect yourself from all of this confusion and overwhelm. So let's get into it. The statement or the quote comes from the great American existential psychologist Rollo May and his book The Cry for Myth. May says, "Every individual seeks, indeed must seek, if he or she is to remain sane, to bring some order and coherence into the stream of sensations, emotions, and ideas entering his or her consciousness from within or without. Each one of us is forced to do deliberately for oneself what in the previous ages was done by family, custom, church, and state, namely, to form the myths in terms of which we can make some sense of experience." Now, if this statement itself was overwhelming and confusing, don't worry. As I said, I'm going to make it clear for you by analyzing it and making it not only clear, but also even practical and useful. So, first thing that we are going to notice, the very beginning, every individual seeks, indeed must seek, if he or she is to remain sane, to bring some order, and then everything else that he said. What this tells us, the default state of consciousness for the modern human being, but we could argue for human beings in general across history, is not perfect harmony, is not perfect peace, is not bliss. The default state requires us to bring some order into consciousness. Once again, he describes all of these things, to not repeat the whole quote, but basically to bring some order in and coherence into these different elements entering our consciousness, which means bringing order into consciousness itself. Meaning the default state of human consciousness is not this perfect bliss or peace or harmony. Now, why is this important? Well, most people are not aware of this or are afraid to accept that our default state requires establishing order. Some people are going to find this disturbing and difficult to stomach because there are people who have fallen for the misinterpretations of a lot of Eastern philosophical and religious traditions. And these misinterpretations want to convince you that you are supposed to always feel like your internal experience is this perfect bliss or peace or harmony, equilibrium. That the default state of human consciousness is actually that harmony. Well, once again, we are arguing that it is not, because we have the task of bringing order into our consciousness. Let's continue. The second thing that we are going to notice is that in the past, something was different. Maybe not necessarily regarding our default state of consciousness, but regarding the systems and institutions that helped bring order into our consciousness. So, May said, each one of us is forced to do deliberately for oneself what in the previous ages was done by family, custom, church, and state. Meaning, in the past, individual relied on external structures and systems and institutions to provide what? To provide meaning, coherence, order into one's consciousness. What is the ultimate example of that? Religion, as May says church, but of course he's talking about all religions. So in the past, the family system was stronger. Religion had a way stronger role in one's life. Regardless of the fact that we have plenty of people today who claim to be religious, they cannot deny the fact that the development of society and the modern age disrupted the influence of religion. Unless you are living in a village that has resisted modernization no matter how religious you are, your engagement the with the structure of the modern society prevents you from offering your whole life to be guided by religion. This would be too long of a side tangent, but so many philosophers talked about this. This is actually what Nietzsche meant when he talked about the death of God. The development of human society, the progress of science, obliterated the influence that the religion has actually on one's life. Again, not to get into history of philosophy and how philosophy predicted this and analyzed this, just it's worth acknowledging that those systems, institutions, and structures, all of them external, that previously brought order and coherence and meaning to our consciousness, they are weakened or non-existent. You wouldn't be watching this and you wouldn't be feeling overwhelmed if your family or your state, nation, your church was able, or any other religious institution was able to completely relieve you of the confusion of the modern age. So just by the fact that you are thinking about this, it is confirming the fact, and this is not attacking your family or your state or your religion, but the fact that we are talking about this is confirming the situation that is described here. Those institutions, structures, and systems are not strong enough anymore to bring completely, fully coherence, meaning, and order into our consciousness. Now, the third thing, we are actually, in terms of how we look at the quote, we are going a step back to analyze once again what are we bringing order into. To bring some order and coherence into the stream of sensations, emotions, and ideas entering his or her consciousness from within or without. Meaning, today you have the responsibility to make sense of your life. For you to create structure, for you to create order, amidst, again, all of these sensations, ideas, emotions produced by different sensations and stimuli, to do what? Namely, to form the myths in terms of which we can make sense of experience, to create your personal myth. And we have to bring another thinker into this equation right now, that's Carl Jung. Carl Jung, who respected Christianity immensely, he said that Christianity in the modern age is not able to provide you with a myth. The myth of Christianity is not strong anymore. And again, for every single person watching this, if you're thinking about your religion that is different from Christianity, or you're thinking about Christianity, this is not an attack. You believe what you want to believe. This is not an attack for you to not believe. This is to make the claim that once again, the modern human has been exposed to complete disruption of the foundation upon which the human society has been built over centuries. And that's Christianity, or in different parts of the world, different religions. It has been disrupted by modernization. That's a historical fact. And then psychological, we will not call it fact, because it's not a fact, it is a claim, it is a theory, it is an idea. For example, coming from Carl Jung, saying that we can extract immense value from religions, but a religion on its own, at least Jung claimed, cannot give you that myth anymore. You need to inquire what is your personal myth. That was his claim. And he said that the task of all tasks for the individual is to answer the question, what myth am I living? So we see how this overlaps with May's proposition of forming the myths in terms of which we can make some sense of experience. Experience meaning all these sensations, ideas, emotions that we are interacting with or receiving. That is everything about how we interact with the world, how to make sense of that, to form the myths that provide sense of meaning and narrative to that. So if we can kind of summarize this, the default state of human consciousness is not perfect bliss or peace. The default state of human consciousness requires actually effort and intention to bring order into it. In the past, this order, this meaning, narrative, coherence was provided by family, tradition, nation or state, church, or any other religious institution. For the vast majority of people, these institutions and structures don't provide such a strong effect to completely give one sense of meaning, narrative, and structure to the point where they are not overwhelmed and confused by the age that they are living in, which then puts responsibility onto the individual. As far as we know, for the first time in history, it puts responsibility solely on the individual for him or her to find their own myth. Because Rollo May, just like Carl Jung and certain other thinkers, taught in terms of myth, story, narrative. So the responsibility is to find your personal myth. Because all of these other things also provided myths, tradition of a nation or a state, the story, the narrative, the myth of who we are as a people, what our purpose and mission is. Religion, narrative, story, myth. What is to be human? How is a human supposed to live one's life? What he or she is supposed to believe in? Family, tradition of a family, narrative, story, myth. Who we are as a family. How are we supposed to orient ourselves towards life, through life? Again, for the vast majority of people, those myths and narratives are not strong enough anymore for different historical and social reasons. So, the responsibility is on you as an individual to develop or find or discover or create your own myth. Your myth that will give sense, meaning, coherence, and narrative to your life experience. Now, one thing that Rollo May and Carl Jung didn't anticipate, didn't get a chance to experience, is the extent of confusion in our modern age. They were not able to see people doom scrolling for 5 hours per day. If it was difficult to create your own myth 100 years ago, imagine how difficult it is now. If it was difficult to create your own myth 50 years ago, when Rollo May wrote this, imagine how difficult it is now. It has always been a big project, an immense task to find your own myth. Imagine, once again, how difficult it is now. And this is not to put you in a state of despair. This is not a black pill, as people call it. Far from it, far from it. This is a task to embrace. At least we have a roadmap. The roadmap is to find your own myth. To not rely, with all due respect for these external structures, to not rely on them to provide you with a sense of meaning and narrative. To find your own narrative. I know that can be controversial for people who are religious, but I would argue, even if you are religious to the bone, in the modern age, you still have to ask, what is my personal myth? Within the religion that I'm trying to live according to. But, as we said, one step, one major aspect of all of this that Rollo May and Carl Jung were not able to talk about is the biggest attack on the order in our consciousness. And those are digital distractions. They talked about confusion, overwhelm, and disorder in one's consciousness because of the rapid development of the modern society. But what would they say if they saw what we are seeing and experiencing? The amount of order and effort you need to bring order into your consciousness in the age of a 3-second attention span. And let's just put it out there. If you are still watching this video and listening, you are at least top 1%. You're probably top 0.005, 0.5, 0.3% of people when it comes to your attention span, when it comes to your ability to follow a train of thought. And I'm not trying to flatter you because you're watching my videos. It's just a fact that the vast majority of people are not able to sit down and follow a narrative. So if we are not able to consume anything for longer than 3 seconds or 30 seconds or 60 seconds, if our attention is constantly pulled in so many different directions, then how can we even begin to create our own myth? That's why, for years now, I've been making my mission to talk about the importance of focus and protecting your attention. It's not for the sake of productivity. It's such a silly idea to view attention and focus just as a productivity tool, for you to become a productivity machine to get things done. No. If you want to become yourself, if you want to live an authentic, fulfilling, meaningful life, you need the ability to focus. Because that ability to focus and resist distractions is the fundamental building block of creating your own myth, finding your own narrative, bringing order into your consciousness, making sense of your life. So I'm going to leave you with 2 challenges. First challenge is make an audit of where your attention is going. I talked about this exercise, or we could call it exercise, multiple times. So, to give you a quick explanation of it, set at least 5 alarms throughout the day for the next at least 7 days. Every time an alarm goes off, you're going to take your phone and you're going to write in your notes where your attention was, and if you were the one who directed your attention there. So did I choose to pick up my phone, or was my attention hijacked by a notification, or did I just instinctively pick up my phone? Did I choose to watch TV? Did I choose to read this book maybe? That probably will be the case if the alarm catches you reading a book, probably you chose to read a book. Every time the alarm goes off, just in one sentence describe what was your state of attention. What was I focusing on? Was I even focused? And was I the one who directed my attention there? At least 5 alarms, more if you can. Of course, don't put alarms in those during those hours of the day where you know you will be focused and you don't want to be disrupted, or where you cannot be disrupted due to work or any other obligation. Of course, you are an adult, hopefully, and can figure that out, that you should not put alarms at the moments of the day where you don't want to be distracted. At least 5 alarms for the next 7 days. Keep that attention journal to, before even taking major steps to reclaim your attention, to get an idea of how your attention is invested and distributed throughout the day. The second task, the second challenge, is to start engaging with the narrative of your life. Block out at least 30 minutes where you will have 0 distractions, and you're going to sit in front of a piece of paper and you're going to journal on the question, what is the narrative that I have been living so far? What is the story of my life? What has been the story of my life? Journal on that. At least 30 minutes. If you can do more, amazing. The only rule is, in those 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes, you can either write or do nothing. So if the words are not coming out, you're not allowed to get up and do something else. Sit for those 30 minutes. If you write 1 sentence in 30 minutes, okay, fair enough. As long as you didn't reach for distractions, as long as you didn't reach for something else to relieve you of that challenge and boredom and resistance. So, the rule is, you either write or you do nothing. You sit there and wait for the words to come out. Do the attention journal and audit. Do at least 1 journaling block, at least 30 minutes in the next 7 days. Journal on the narrative of your life, and I will continue delivering value on this topic. I will continue making this roadmap more detailed and containing more practical steps, so that you, and myself included with you, and everyone else that we can reach, are not overwhelmed and confused and distracted and overstimulated by this digital age, but we actually take things into our advantage and live our own stories and our own myths. Thank you.